40 officials, 40 seconds. Those two numbers alone tell you everything you need to know about the scale, the speed, and the devastating precision of what the United States and Israel have set in motion across the Middle East. This is not a border skirmish. This is not a carefully calibrated drone strike against a single target in a remote desert. What is unfolding right now in real time is one of the most sweeping and consequential military campaigns in modern Middle Eastern history, a coordinated, intelligence-driven operation to systematically dismantle the leadership structure of one of the world's most dangerous and destabilizing regimes. The operation has a name, Operation Epic Fury, and in the hours since its opening salvo, the scope of what has been accomplished and what continues to unfold is unlike anything this region has witnessed in a generation. Missiles are crossing the skies over central Israel overnight. Entire apartment buildings in Beirut are being leveled in precision airstrikes. 5,000-pound bunker-buster bombs are tearing through deeply buried Iranian military installations at the Strait of Hormuz, and in the streets of Tehran, the paramilitary forces that the Iranian regime has long used to terrorize its own citizens into silence are being systematically targeted and eliminated. This story is not simply about missiles and airstrikes. It is about American power, regional stability, nuclear deterrence, and the future of a country whose people have lived under the iron grip of a theocratic regime for more than 4 decades. The ground has shifted. The question now is how far the tremors will travel. The headline out of this fast-moving situation is historic. Iran's intelligence commander, identified by a senior Israeli official as Ismail Khatib, has been killed in a joint American and Israeli intelligence operation. That senior official described Khatib as personally responsible for managing Iran's vast global network of sleeper cells, a clandestine apparatus embedded in countries around the world, carrying out terrorism and assassination on behalf of the regime. The official's words were unambiguous. This man had American blood on his hands. His network specifically targeted current and former United States officials, including President Donald Trump. What makes this elimination even more operationally significant is the context surrounding it. According to that same senior official, Khatib was the only individual known to have survived the opening round of Operation Epic Fury, the strikes that killed Iran's supreme leader and approximately 40 other top officials in roughly 40 seconds. He escaped once, he did not escape again. Fox News foreign correspondent Trey Yingst, reporting from the ground inside the conflict zone, confirmed all of these details and added critical context from the scene. He reported that overnight Iran fired missiles at central Israel, a retaliatory salvo in response to the ongoing Israeli and American campaign. Israeli air defenses intercepted a portion of those incoming projectiles, but others broke through the defensive shield, and those that did were carrying cluster munitions, an indiscriminate weapon type that scatters submunitions across wide civilian areas upon detonation. Yingst and his crew had returned directly from one of the impact sites where they had been on the ground interviewing an Israeli military spokesperson. What they found there was a scene of devastating human cost. A parking area beneath a residential apartment building was engulfed in flames, with considerable structural damage to the surrounding complex. 2 people were killed at that location, 2 elderly civilians, murdered in their own neighborhood in the middle of the night. That detail matters. Behind every military briefing and every strategic calculation are human beings, and those 2 lives underscore that the consequences of this conflict are not abstract. Meanwhile, as Iran was striking Israeli civilians, Israeli forces were conducting their own fresh round of strikes against Hezbollah, Iran's largest and most capable proxy force, in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Yingst reported that an entire apartment building was destroyed in a single Israeli strike during the overnight campaign. Those strikes came directly in response to new Hezbollah rocket fire directed at central and southern Israel, a cycle of escalation that has been tightening with each passing hour. It is important to note that the Israeli campaign is not limited to Lebanon. Strikes continued inside Iran itself, with Israeli forces targeting the Basij forces, the paramilitary units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that man checkpoints throughout Tehran. The Basij serve a specific and critical function for the regime. They are the foot soldiers of internal repression, deployed to intimidate ordinary Iranians and prevent them from taking to the streets. By targeting those checkpoints, the United States and Israel are making a deliberate strategic statement. They are working to remove the regime's capacity to suppress its own people and to create the conditions under which Iranian citizens might be able to organize, demonstrate, and potentially drive political change from within. Fox News correspondent Steve Harrigan, reporting from his position at the Iran-Armenia border, added a crucial additional layer to this picture. The United States Air Force, Harrigan reported, has been conducting intensive strikes against Iranian positions in and around the Strait of Hormuz, deploying 5,000-pound GPS-guided bunker-buster bombs against deeply buried anti-ship missile systems positioned along that critical waterway. Some of those Iranian missile installations had been buried deep underground, hardened specifically to survive conventional air attack. The 5,000-pound munitions, among the most powerful conventional weapons in the American arsenal, have been the answer to that preparation. The Strait of Hormuz is the single most important oil transit choke point in the world, and keeping it open is a core strategic objective of the operation, as consequential, in the administration's view, as the campaign to eliminate the regime's leadership. To understand how the world arrived at this extraordinary moment, it is necessary to step back and trace the arc of the American-Iranian relationship across the past several decades. The enmity between Washington and Tehran was forged in the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when Iranian revolutionaries seized the United States Embassy in Tehran and held 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days. That act of state-sponsored hostage-taking poisoned the relationship from its very first moments and established the fundamental character of the Islamic Republic as a state defined in part by its institutional hostility to American power. In the decades that followed, Iran built a vast network of proxy forces across the region: Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and Shia militia groups spread across Iraq and Syria. That network became the regime's primary instrument for projecting power and threatening American forces and allies while maintaining a degree of deniability. Simultaneously, Iran pursued a nuclear program that became the central security challenge of the early 21st century. President Barack Obama's administration attempted to address that challenge through diplomacy, negotiating the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2015, a deal that placed temporary limits on Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. Critics argued that the deal delayed rather than eliminated Iran's nuclear capability, that it failed to address the regime's ballistic missile program, and that the sanctions relief it provided helped fund the very proxy network that threatened American interests. President Trump withdrew from the agreement in 2018, imposing maximum economic pressure and demanding a more comprehensive negotiation. In his remarks discussed during the broadcast, Trump stated directly that had he not terminated what he described as Obama's horrible deal, there would have been a nuclear war approximately 4 years ago, a nuclear holocaust. He stated further that without the decision to strike Iran's nuclear sites, that outcome would have been repeated. Those assessments reflect the administration's core conviction that decisive preemptive action was the only viable path. The key figures driving this operation span the highest levels of American and Israeli government. President Donald Trump, now in his second term, has made the confrontation with Iran a defining strategic priority, operationalizing a framework he first articulated in his initial term with the full force of American military capability in his second. His approach has consistently prioritized overwhelming force over multilateral negotiation, and his relationship with the Israeli government has enabled a level of joint operational integration that is unprecedented in the history of the two countries' security partnership. Steve Witkoff, the Trump administration's special envoy, has emerged as the central diplomatic figure of the conflict. According to reporting discussed on the broadcast, Witkoff was speaking directly with Iran's foreign minister on a daily basis in the period immediately before Operation Epic Fury was launched, a detail that confirms this military action was preceded by sustained diplomatic engagement at a senior level. Trump has stated publicly that Iran is now expressing a desire to make a deal. Iran's foreign minister has publicly denied that communications are ongoing. Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst addressed that contradiction with notable precision. The Iranians also deny targeting civilians. He observed even as his team had just returned from an apartment where two elderly people were killed by Iranian cluster munitions. They deny targeting Gulf countries, even as they target Gulf countries daily. They deny attempting to close the Strait of Hormuz, even as they fire ballistic missiles toward the United States Embassy in Iraq. The pattern is consistent, Yingst noted. Iranian official statements routinely fail to match reality on the ground. The multidimensional implications of Operation Epic Fury extend across the political, economic, social, legal, and international landscape simultaneously. On the political front inside the United States, the administration has constructed a powerful narrative justification for the operation, rooted in the direct threat to American leadership, the confirmation by a senior Israeli official that the intelligence network managed by Khatib specifically targeted American politicians, including the sitting president of the United States, gives the campaign a personal and visceral dimension that generates broad domestic support. The NATO dimension, however, introduces significant political tension. President Trump's sharp criticism of the alliance's failure to contribute to the effort to secure the Strait of Hormuz reflects a long-standing and deeply felt conviction that America's European partners have benefited from American security guarantees while contributing disproportionately little. The economic argument underlying that frustration is stark and concrete. The United States imports approximately 3% of its oil from the region, while Europe sources approximately 90% of its energy supply from those same waters. Japan and the Gulf states are similarly dependent. The countries that stand to benefit most from a secure Strait of Hormuz have been, by the administration's account, the least willing to help secure it. France's reported offer to join the effort only after the conflict has concluded was received, predictably, with little appreciation. Senator Lindsey Graham has been quoted as saying he has never seen President Trump angrier than when the extent of NATO's non-response became clear. The president himself, in remarks reported by Harrigan, noted pointedly that the United States supplied hundreds of billions of dollars in support for Ukraine's war against Russia, aid from which European nations benefited substantially, and that Europe has not provided so much as a single minesweeper to the current operation. The economic implications run deeper still. Any sustained disruption to the flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz would send immediate and severe shockwaves through global commodity markets, driving energy prices sharply higher and creating cascading inflationary pressure across virtually every sector of the global economy. The administration's intensive campaign to destroy Iran's anti-ship missile systems along the strait reflects a clear strategic calculation. The economic cost of allowing those systems to remain functional and operational far outweighs the cost of destroying them. On the legal front, the deployment of American military force and intelligence resources in a joint operation with a foreign military raises questions about presidential war powers under the United States Constitution and the War Powers Resolution of 1973. How Congress responds to the scope and duration of American involvement will be a central political story in the coming weeks. And at the international level, the reactions of Russia and China, both of which have maintained complex relationships with Tehran, will shape the broader geopolitical consequences of the operation and will be watched closely by analysts and policymakers worldwide. Political analysts following the situation closely are noting several important dimensions. The real-time intelligence apparatus operating behind the scenes of this campaign is by most accounts a remarkable achievement of American-Israeli operational coordination. The ability to identify, track, and eliminate individual officials within the Iranian regime's leadership and support structure in real time across multiple countries simultaneously reflects years of intelligence investment and partnership. The systematic methodology described in the Wall Street Journal's reporting, in which Iranian officials are flushed from headquarters by bombing, forced to relocate to secondary positions, and then struck there as well, reflects a disciplined operational logic designed not merely to eliminate individuals but to prevent the regime from reconstituting its leadership and command and control capabilities. Analysts also note the significance of the direct outreach to Iranian officials on the blacklist, the message that they can leave the country, side with their own people, or face death. Reports indicate that a number of those officials have chosen departure. Public sentiment inside the United States, while complex, reflects the powerful emotional resonance of the argument that the regime being targeted had American blood on its hands and had plotted against American leaders. International observers, particularly in the Gulf states and among Israel's regional partners, are watching the operation as a potential redefinition of the security architecture of the entire Middle East. This operation does not exist in isolation. It fits into a broader pattern of escalating American assertiveness under the current administration, particularly with respect to Iran's proxy network and nuclear ambitions. In the months preceding the launch of Operation Epic Fury, the United States and Israel had been engaged in sustained intelligence cooperation, targeting key nodes of Iran's regional infrastructure. Hezbollah's rocket fire into Israel, which preceded the latest round of strikes on Beirut, is itself part of a pattern that has been building for months, with the proxy network testing Israeli and American resolve at regular intervals. The targeting of the Basij forces at their checkpoints in Tehran connects to a longer history of the Iranian regime using those forces to suppress dissent, most visibly during the major protest waves that have shaken Iran in recent years. The administration's explicit stated goal of giving the Iranian people the ability to peacefully demonstrate reflects a strategic understanding that the ultimate resolution of the Iranian challenge may require internal political transformation, not just military pressure from outside. Looking ahead, the critical variables to watch are clear and pressing. The first is the status of the Iranian regime's remaining leadership. With the supreme leader and dozens of top officials eliminated, who is in effective command, and how capable is that remaining structure of making coherent strategic decisions? The intelligence-driven hunting operation, which targets each replacement who steps into a vacated leadership role, is specifically designed to prevent any stable reconstitution of command authority. The second is the diplomatic track. If Iran is genuinely communicating through back channels with Steve Witkoff and the Trump administration about the terms of a potential deal, the specifics of those conversations will be decisive. What does the administration demand? What is the remaining Iranian leadership willing and able to concede? What role, if any, do third-party intermediaries play? The third variable is the behavior of Iran's proxy forces, particularly Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is the most capable and heavily armed of those networks. The overnight strikes on Beirut signal Israel's clear intention to neutralize Hezbollah's ability to exploit the current moment of Iranian vulnerability. Whether Hezbollah's leadership calculates that restraint or escalation better serves its survival will shape the immediate military picture significantly. What we are witnessing is a moment of historical consequence that will be analyzed and debated for decades. Operation Epic Fury has, in a matter of days, produced a seismic shift in the security architecture of the Middle East. The supreme leader is dead. Approximately 40 top officials were eliminated in the opening 40 seconds. The intelligence commander who had American blood on his hands, who ran sleeper cells across the globe, who plotted against American leadership, including the President of the United States, has been hunted down and killed. Iran's navy has been dismantled, its air force decimated, its anti-ship missile systems along the Strait of Hormuz destroyed by 5,000-pound bunker busters. Hezbollah is being struck in Beirut. The Basij are being eliminated at their checkpoints in Tehran. And a real-time joint American-Israeli intelligence apparatus continues to hunt every official who steps into a vacant leadership role every single day. The NATO alliance has revealed a fracture that will not easily heal. The Iranian people stand at a potential historical inflection point. and a diplomatic back-channel between Washington and Tehran, denied publicly but described in credible reporting, may hold the key to what comes next. The stakes could not be higher, the pace could not be faster, and the outcome could not be more uncertain. This is a story that demands your continued attention. This is Operation Epic Fury, and it is far from over.